Mark Cannizzaro of the New York Post joins us now. And Mark, Tom Brady officially announces his retirement for the second time today, posting his social media and announcing to the entire NFL world that he's hanging him up, calling it quits. When you saw this news, what was your initial reaction?
Well, first of all, Ryan, it's oddly enough, well, nothing's ever not calculated with Brady, but it was a year to the day to his retirement from last year, which lasted 40 days. This will be for good. I'm quite certain. He did say that on his video, which was pretty emotional. My first reaction was not shock. I felt like maybe if he was going to land anywhere, maybe one more run in San Francisco, or I should say one more run, but one more run, comma, in San Francisco. Just because of maybe getting back to the Bay Area, depending on what the Niners situation was, or possibly with Josh McDaniels in Oakland, his good pal, but from Patriot days. But the one thing I would say is I was at the final game that he played against Dallas in Tampa. Was in a pretty packed interview room, and I asked him in that interview session what would go into his decision making, and all he said was, "I just want to go home and get a good night's sleep." And I got the impression from him that he was tired, and it's been a difficult year for him. He also, by the way, in that he ended that press conference, and which everybody probably saw, in a manner in which it felt like he was saying goodbye, at least to Tampa. He thanked everybody down there for taking him in. He ended the press conference by thanking the media, which doesn't happen very often. Whether how sincere that was, I'm not so sure, but I think it was sincere to a degree. And but when you look at what's gone on this year with him, this is probably his most trying year professionally on a team that struggled. He struggled at times, even though his numbers were really good. And more importantly than any of that, he went through a divorce. Not only a divorce, but a massively public divorce. And that had to weigh on him. And of course, it weighed on him. And I just think that he was just exhausted from it all. And does he want to go, start all over again somewhere else and go through an entire another off season at age 45? He said all along he wanted to play to 45, and he did. So I don't blame him for shutting it down. I think all of us are selfish, and in that we'd like to see him keep playing, because the next move would have been a dramatic move, whether it was, hey, let's see what he can do in Oakland. I mean, in Oakland, right? We can't get rid of Oakland. In Las Vegas with the Raiders, because that team had some pretty good offensive skill position talent around him if he would have gone. And the Niners potentially with that defense and an amazing amount of skill position players around him would have been fun to watch what he could have done in another chapter. But I don't think we have any right to expect any more of him than he's given us already. Yeah, so at the end of the day, I don't think I was surprised. I think there was part of me that was hoping that he'd keep going, just because the story value would always be there.
When you think about how you viewed Tom Brady in his entire career, and there's the numbers are there, the Super Bowls are there. Is this the greatest quarterback and greatest competitor we've ever seen in NFL history?
I think yes on both counts, and that's all due respect to Joe Montana, who certainly was an idol of Brady's growing up in the Bay Area. But Joe, I mean, listen, I was a kid watching Joe. It was before I became a sports writer. Joe was one of the greatest winners of all time, certainly. And then you have Steve Young on top of that. But Brady did it longer. His longevity was spectacular. I mean, his only real major injury was a freak, knee injury early in the year. I believe it was '08 when he just, a lineman kind of, fell into his knee from the Chiefs. So this is a guy that, has done it for so long at such a high level and broken, he's basically shattered every record in terms of winning that there is. And he did it in two places. And he won Super Bowls, I mean, in three different decades, I think, if I'm not mistaken, right? So I mean, that's unheard of. And I don't think we'll ever see that again. I mean, we always say that. I cover golf. I don't think I'll ever see anything like Tiger Woods again. But, maybe 30 years down the road or 20 years down the road, we'll see that. But I think for all of those reasons, and I heard something on sports radio earlier today from Chris Canty, who played against him, former Giant, you know, former used to be Redskin, so to speak. And I thought he made a really interesting statement about playing against Brady and about his greatest strength and superpower, not something you can measure. And what he talked about was his competitiveness, and which is one of the things you just mentioned. And when you talk to anybody that's played with him, they talk about that. And everybody they're all like that. You know what I mean? I'll give you, you hear everybody who's known Brady for a long time say he doesn't want to lose at anything, whether it's ping pong or whatever, right? And I was just in the Chiefs locker room, after the game, talking to Chad Henne, who's Patrick Mahomes' backup, and I heard him say the same thing. Like, this is a guy that literally will not let anybody win in the locker room, ping pong or in basketball or anything. So all of those guys, each one of those guys, the great players in all sports, they have that trait, where whatever play is in front of them is the most important thing in their life at that very second. And Brady played that way right till the end.
He did. And for us as a big football fan myself, obviously as a Jets fan growing up, he tormented me for so many years as the Patriots quarterback. And now to finally see it all come to an end, it is a little bit surreal because there was that hope you could keep playing and see how long he can continually do this. And you made up a great point. I mean, he really only got hurt that one time where his knee, was a freak accident, a freak injury. He kept himself in shape and he was always on the field. He was always prepared. And my follow-up to this is 7 Super Bowls. There's no, you think about Cal Ripken, his record. You talk about records all time. We didn't think Wayne Gretzky's record would ever get broken as the all-time goal scorer, but Alexander Ovechkin is knocking on the door and looks like he's going to break that record. But when it comes to Tom Brady, 7 Super Bowls, do you see that record ever being beaten?
I don't, just because I just don't see anybody playing with that kind of longevity. I mean, that's a guess because, I mean, somebody might come along. Listen, 50 is the old, what is it? I'm going to screw that up now. 50 is the old 30 or something or whatever, or 40 is the old 25. I mean, they're in better shape. There's more longevity to everybody now, right? These athletes. But the other dynamic here, which I would guess that would hold somebody back from staying as long as he did, and Brady was just an anomaly. I mean, obviously he made countless millions, tens and hundreds of whatever millions of dollars in his career, not just, on the football field, but endorsements. The money is so good for these guys now. It doesn't really, it takes a different soul to stay on that long amongst these highest level of professional athletes because they just don't have to, And, Brady just, he burned to do it. And you know what? You could listen, it's pure speculation, but you could make the argument. And again, this is completely just me talking out of the top of my head, but, in his divorce or, his split with Gisele Bundchen, it was pretty clear that she didn't want him playing anymore. Right. And it's been clear for years, not just in the last year, the past year, I should say, that, she was concerned about his health. And he made the choice to play another year, and it was clearly against what she wanted. Now, whether that was the last straw in their relationship, who knows what goes on behind closed doors, but it had to have had some impact, I would have to think, at the end of the day of his marriage. And that's a sacrifice he made because he burned so much competitively that he didn't want to let it go. And, I've covered a bunch of athletes that don't want to let it go. And, but this guy's at the top of the rung, right? I mean, he's the greatest of all time, and he didn't need to play this year. He won that Super Bowl in Tampa. He could have just walked away, right? How easily would that have been? But I think it's probably still hard on him right now, honestly, Ryan, because you can't tell me he's not better than 3/4 of the quarterbacks in the league right now as we sit. Of course, we could still play. Yep. I mean, geez, he led the NFL in completions this year and attempts, and was right up there in yards. I don't know, 28 touchdowns and only 7 interceptions, whatever his numbers were. Those are career numbers for some players. Can you imagine? You think Zach Wilson wants those numbers for 1 year? I mean, as good as as well as Daniel Jones played this year, he hasn't had a year like that, right? He's about to sign a new contract for 30 something million a year, right? Tom Brady didn't need that, but he wanted to keep going. And when you know you can still keep doing it, it's so hard to walk away, right? So you talk about sacrifices and you talk about his competitive nature. His competitive nature wouldn't let him hang him up, and he played last year. And maybe that was the nail in the coffin, so to speak, for in his marriage. And maybe that's unfair for me to say, but because it played out so publicly, it certainly would seem that way.
My last question to you, just to encompass this entire career of Tom Brady, what is your favorite moment or one that stands out to you the most when you think about his entire career? What's that one moment that stands out the most to you about him?
Hmm. I tell you what, this is going to be a weird answer, but and I've covered all of the Super Bowls that he won, and when we finish up in the press box and when the games end, you scramble to go downstairs to the locker rooms, and you're down in the bowels of the stadium, and it's a yard sale down there. There's everybody's down there. There's hangers on and family and friends and blah blah blah. And I remembered in both of his losses to the Giants in the Super Bowl, and I don't remember which one in particular it was, but I remembered him walking out of the stadium with one of his kids in his arms and Giselle walking next to him, and the gutted look on his face. I mean, this is the guy that had everything in the world, right? I mean, wealth, family. I mean, you name it, he's got it, right? And he already had the Super Bowl rings too. Oh, by the way, but that look on his face, he was ashen. It was like the worst thing in the world ever happened to him. And I know that's kind of a weird answer, but when you hit me with that answer, I'm trying to think of all the great things he's done. I mean, he's done over the years, and to me, I hate to say it, but they kind of blend together.
Right.
Uh, but that's a unique moment that I saw with my own eyes that wasn't on television and wasn't chronicled for everybody to see, and it just showed what goes into it and how it affects somebody who even like that who has everything, and I remember that as well as I remember anything he's ever done on the field.